Today's session is part of our Business Development Club. As you know, our BD sessions are monthly, and they're part of the network events that we put out for our members. In today's session, we'll be talking to the senior teams from Gray Matters, a Pimento member, Adam Gray and Ivan Fatturusso, something nearer, Fatturusso, who will be taking us through all aspects of agency marketing and new business strategies, how to develop them, how to implement them, and how to learn them within your own agency. So some really useful insights to help you drive more business into your agency or consultancy. And also providing some tips and guidance on marketing initiatives that work. So it'll be good to be able to hear it from people who do this for a living, day in, day out, as many of you do on this call. For those that don't know, Adam is a creative, commercially focused new business and marketing specialist, driven by a desire to help B2B businesses stand out and grow by building reputable brands. And that's both within our communications and marketing sector as well as outside of that. So you're working with clients when it comes to business development, and if they need lead management and they need people to help them, do get in contact. He honed his craft working at a number of new business consultancies and in-house for RAP, Omnicom, Visium, Dentsu Aegis, and Isobar. He's experienced in brand building, marketing and sales pipeline development, as well as running hundreds of successful multi-million-pound pitches. So he's been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. Ivan is a sales and business development specialist that has forged his career growing revenue, acquiring new businesses and helping businesses position themselves for success. We know how important positioning is within the agency land, given obviously the number of agencies you're competing with. He has occupied a number of business development roles and new business roles in startups and within the media and communications industry, including Dentsu Aegis, which is where I guess you guys must have met, and Group M. He's a pragmatist, and his exposure to diverse cultures over the years and are some of the factors that help him secure winning results. And we've been speaking, as you know, about diversity over the last few weeks. And so I think it's also very interesting to have diversity as part of today's conversation. Paddy is going to be in the hot seat, so I can sit back and enjoy the ride. Welcome once again to all of you. I think we now have 50 people on the call, which is great. I'm now going to hand over to Paddy, who is going to MC.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. And thanks for the intro. Right, Adam and Ivan, it is great to have you guys here. If you can unmute and pin us to the spotlight if possible.
Hey, Paddy. Thank you.
Hi, guys. We've got lots to discuss today, so I think let's get cracking, because I think people really want to listen to you guys talking about sort of all things marketing, new business strategies. But to Adam, I'm going to start with you. Just to start this, put some context around the whole discussion. It'd be great to have your views around actually what we mean by strategy, and when should an agency bring in a new business strategy?
Yeah, cool. Hi guys, nice to be on the call with you all this morning. So yeah, we get asked this a lot. So we work with all different sizes of agencies, you know, people sort of 1- and 2-man bands to sort of 50-man, 100-man independent agencies. And I think the point here about strategy is that there are levels, and I think depending on where you are in your journey and the budget you've got to invest is kind of where you should aim your strategy, because you know you can go to town with a strategy. You can spend a lot of time really engineering that, thinking that, building out the detail. But ultimately, if you're just starting out, you can afford to be a bit more tactical. In fact, you need to be, because you know it's that you need to sort of fail fast. You need to get going, and so there's no point overthinking a strategy. You know, I've seen people go the other way where they spend hours on end and days and weeks sort of deliberating over everything, and ultimately you've got to get it out to market. You've got to test. You've got to learn. So I would say that just in terms of having a strategy, I think all businesses need some form of strategy. I mean, often people come to us and say, you know, we need help with our new business strategy. And I sort of say to them, well, what's the business strategy? And they sort of look at me like I'm mad. And that's very, very common, believe it or not. There's very few people who have come to me and said, this is our business strategy of where we want to go. How can new business help deliver against that? Which is kind of the brief we'd like. So we actually end up writing almost like business strategies, which help end up defining, you know, products, capabilities, service offering, and going in there. But you've got to start with something to build beyond that. And I think I guess when we talk about strategy, what we kind of break it down into 5 key areas that you can sort of all take away, and I think will be helpful for your business. So the first one is the brand and your positioning. So where do you see yourselves in the market? How are you going to sell yourselves? You know, everything about your backstory, your culture, your values, personality, and we can delve into that a bit more later. The next part is around your sort of commercial objectives and the you know, the revenue and income that you're looking to build, and then also what comes with that in terms of sales and outbound. So it's looking at prospecting, it's looking at how you're going to grow existing clients. It's really that kind of, you know, you driving the sales, right? Because the next part of the strategy is more around sort of content marketing and driving inbound. So you've kind of got these 2 levers, right, that go between everything in a strategy. One is kind of you pushing, and the other one is you pulling, and both are really important. The fourth one is conversion. So ultimately, it's a different part of the strategy, and it's how you're converting any opportunities you're getting. So how are you qualifying? How are you packaging up your services? How are you pricing? How are you negotiating? You know, all of that part to get things over the line. And then the last part is kind of what sits, I guess, underneath all of that, which is your operations and processes. And that's what often lets a lot of people down. We find in terms of strategy is that with all the will in the world and the best strategy, unless you've got the processes and the systems and tools and everything, and you've carved out your time and understanding who's doing what, then you're not going to deliver on that strategy. So hopefully that kind of gives you a kind of broad view of how we do the strategy.
That does, and actually leads nicely into sort of unpacking each of those as we move forward. I think the first one we talked about was the brand and the positioning side of things. And Ivan, as part of that, so agencies need to have that distinct positioning or try and do something that's different and help and differentiate them in a very cluttered marketplace. How do you guys go about really helping determine that agency positioning for your clients?
Yeah, that's I guess right before I get into that, Paddy, I'd also just like to add on to what Adam just said, and just thinking about strategy and what it means. Often there's this perception that, you know, strategy is this big mysterious dark art, which seems really daunting from the outside when you don't have one in place. But at the end of the day, it's just a plan of action, right, to achieve an objective, however big or small that might be. So it doesn't need to be something too complex. And I guess the key there actually is just to project manage a strategy, but having the foundation, so having the positioning, which is what we're about to get onto, is really what you need to nail before being able to implement sort of a successful new biz strategy. So with the positioning itself, and about how to kind of stand out and be unique in such a cluttered space, I guess to start with, there needs to be an element of due diligence. So, you know, you need to understand the market you're operating in, your competitors, how are they positioning themselves, who are they talking to, what services do they offer, both rationally, so actually the tangible services, what they do day in, day out, as well as emotionally. You know, how are they engaging people on an emotional level? What are the values that they stand for? And effectively, once you've understood that, you want to differentiate yourself from that and appear unique amongst all of this. So I guess effectively you want to align your communications and your business to these particular aspects that you identified, and really kind of delve into a lot of different things that you can look at here. It's, you know, your backstory, what do you stand for, how you came to start the business or where the business is going, your tone of voice. There's so many different things that you can look at that you wouldn't necessarily immediately think of, but there's a lot of different things that you can pull on to actually position yourself as unique. That's what I would say on positioning. So it's about the due diligence, and then it's about really honing in on what the differences are and investing in those differences, you know, investing in good copywriting, branding, tone of voice, and effectively pushing these out on your website, on your creds, on your all of the comms that go out, and being consistent with it.
Brilliant, thank you. Adam, do you want to add anything into that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk in a couple of different ways of how we go about producing that positioning. I mean, practically, you know, we're very pragmatic in terms of how we work, so we don't want to talk too much of theory. Like, how do we actually do it is, we do a couple of workshops where we will look at the kind of, as Ivan said, the kind of the emotional side, the backstory of kind of your values, your philosophy, why you exist, all of that stuff. And then we'll also look at the rational reasons. So what do you do? Who do you do it for? What challenges do you solve, right? So there's key workshops that we do with senior leadership teams and the sort of management. The next part is a kind of 360 audit of your market, and I guess we're independent sort of consultants, so we can kind of we go in and we'll speak to your clients, we'll speak to your employees, and we'll actually you know, get a feeling as to what they think your positioning is and where do they think you're strong and what do they think the value that you bring is compared to what you think it is. So there's sometimes be a bit of a disconnect there, which is what we're looking to identify. And then ultimately it's pulling all of that together in a sort of structured way, but in a creative way as well, to outline you know, all these key points. And it's about nailing your messaging, right, all the way back to, like, you know, what's the one line on your website that you're going to have, and then what are the proof points of your positioning, and thinking about how does that your positioning actually trickle down into your culture and the behaviors that you have, basically, to actually prove that this positioning is not just words on a page. And I mean, also just thinking about differentiation and, like, you know, because positioning's tough, right? In this market, it's really tough, right? Because we do it all the time, and there's a lot of agencies out there, and they often sound the same, right? Some of the levers you can pull, which, you know, some of these will be very obvious to you, but I'll just go through them. So you've got a specialist service that you offer, so you could offer, like, you know, very distinct into a service. You can go very niche into a sector and choose that, you know, as your focus. You can work with a type of business or a type of person, and by that I'll just challenge you creatively to think what that means, right? So challenger brands, heritage brands, you know, it could be businesses that are looking to be acquired, those who've just gone through IPO. You know, use your imagination. There are so many ways to categorize a business rather than just say a sector that we want to go after. But, you know, we need to get more creative with how we talk about businesses. You can tap into a mindset, you know, of that business, the ambition, or, you know, is their business focused around sustainability, but different things that could talk about the culture and the mindset of the business. Location could be one where you want to focus businesses within your local area. You could focus on what you solve and the challenges you solve, as opposed to the services that you offer. And that's a really key one if you want to be seen as sort of more strategic in your offering. Your approach. So many agencies have a very, very similar approach. You know, you've probably got 1 billion words for a discovery session and an ideation session and whatever else you want to put in there. But, you know, I do think that, you know, you can make your approaches unique. And even if you have a discovery session, what is different and special about the way you do discovery sessions? And if there isn't anything special about it, then why not? And challenge yourself to make something special. And when you come up with that special something, tell everyone about it, because again, that will make you unique and that will help you stand out. And the last one, which I think is massively overlooked, is personality, right? Tone of voice. And, you know, you look at most agency websites and it's like, you know, if I met you all down the pub or we went for a drink, and I'd probably get this whole personality, and then I'd ask you to write a website copy and you'd suddenly turn into a robot. That's kind of what happens every single time I work with an agency. And so I would really push you to be yourself and just strip it all back and just have fun with it. Have a personality, right? And because when we're all looking at the same agencies, the one that sort of just says something different or has a good feel. But, you know, there's normally about like 5% of agencies I come across that do that. And as an example of that, look at Mellor and Smith, who are a client of ours. They're pretty out there. So you might say they're a 10 and we're a 0, so meet somewhere in the middle. But, you know, that's what I mean when I talk about personality and being, you know, bold.
I'd add one additional thing, Paddy, is to actually practice what you preach. So, for example, I'm seeing a lot of agencies recently saying, you know, we stand for creating positive social impact, but, you know, and that's starting to be a trend, which I think was something new and sort of, but is now, you know, people are in a way starting to get onto that bandwagon. And I would say if you are, you know, claiming these things, then make sure you're also backing them up with tangible, like, how are you actually doing that? How are you actually giving back to the community or yourself as a business, not just through your work?
And there's plenty of tools out there that to help you do that. It's a question actually I'm going to bring in because it's right pertinent to this conversation at the moment, which is actually that differentiation is really key. But how do you differentiate but not become too bespoke or narrow for the market?
Yeah, I'm glad you sort of raised that, because I wanted to answer that question. I think it's really important. So I think this is driven by fear, basically, in the way people position themselves. So it's like, I can't remember, there's a great sales book I read once where they talked about being in a room with like loads of doors all around you. And everybody, you think that by opening one door, that's it, you're closing off all the other doors. But what you don't realize that you're going to open that door and there's going to be a long corridor of another 100 doors, right? And that is what I would liken this positioning to be in, is that people think that by narrowing onto whatever it might be, a sector or a location or whatever their audience is defined by, is going to limit them. But what you'll actually find is that once you go into that world, you'll become a specialist and you'll learn so much about that world that you'll firstly grow quicker because you're a specialist, and so therefore you get that market more than anybody else, and you're going to quickly be able to capitalize and monopolize on that market. So if you want to grow quick, niche, right? And the brilliant thing is that when you get to that level of depth, it will open up so many opportunities for you that you don't realize. So it's all fear, thinking, oh God, we're going to cut our market, that's not going to be exciting. But actually, once you get into it, you're going to sort of realize that you can actually probably diversify your service offering quicker, but focus on that audience. So, you know, if you go into an audience saying, right, we just do SEO for this audience, and it's going to be, I don't know, call it like automotive or something, right? You want to go into, and then suddenly you're learning so much of the automotive sector that you're like, we could easily sell content to this sector because we get it so much. Next thing, you're selling content, and then you're selling videos, and then you're onto TV ads, and it's like, you know, it's the whole kind of horizontal vertical analogy that people have probably heard of before, but yeah, I wouldn't say that it narrows your market at all. I think it actually expands it.
And I think it excites clients more when they know that they're getting someone who understands who they are, where they're working, how they're working, and the way they operate. I think that's sort of, I know my wife's agency is specialist in niche, thriving because of it. So it actually, as you say, it opens up more doors. And in terms of sort of actually, Adam, coming back to you in terms of, we've covered the strategy side of things, and just really nailing the difference between what a marketing strategy is and what a new business strategy, because a lot of the time agencies, especially independent agencies, they're quite sort of siloed and separated, and actually it causes operational impact further down the line as you go back into the business strategy. So it's just really going back into what's the difference, and actually how do you help align them within agencies?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess this is a big part of, like, I guess my history, so where it comes from. So I remember working in like Isobar, you know, and it was like 150 people, and the new business team sat one end of the office, and the marketing and PR team sat at the other end of the office. And we reported into like the UK market, they reported into the global market, and you were just like, what the hell is going on, right? And I'm thinking, you know, if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, right? And if we're going after a certain type of industry, or we're going after a certain client, or whatever it is, we need to be aligned. And I guess the difference, you know, and most people know this, is that marketing is all about driving inbound, so building awareness, driving inbound, so it's very much pull marketing. And new business is about outbound and about conversion. So it's much more about sort of push. But the two have to go hand in hand. And I think it depends what your skill set is. I think new business people that do both are hard to find, and business owners that think both are sometimes hard to find. And I think this is where it gets a bit cut off, right? So you've either probably got someone who really believes in marketing and, doesn't mind speaking, likes to write blogs, wants to do PR and really push themselves, and that's great. And they'll go down that route, and then they'll get to a year in and they'll be like, it's not really driving any leads here, Or you'll get new business people that are just right down the other end of the home, hammering the phones, trying to get in front of everyone, to generate leads. And they're finding it really frigging tough, right? They're banging their head against a brick wall and their numbers are low. And these are the two spectrums, I guess, of what we're trying to avoid, right? So marketing and sales working together is around we practically how we implement that is through things like sales and marketing calendars. So all sales activity and all marketing activity sit on the same calendar, row by row. So what are you doing in marketing? What are you doing in sales, right? And they complement each other. The other part is around thinking in terms of campaigns. So stop dividing them out and think about a 3-month campaign and how does sales and marketing work together to drive leads. So, you could have something like, we would do it like a news, like a blog piece could go into a newsletter, and the call to action of the newsletter could be to sign up to an event. And then we're driving people to the event, and then we're going to use sales to drive more people to the event. And then we're going to have content off the back of the event, and then we're going to try and convert. So it's all kind of driving towards something, as opposed to just, those two things sort of going off in different directions.
And that is very true, because I think it's normally, I remember starting off and it's like, go and pick up the phone and cold call. We haven't got anything to say, but just pick up the phone and say you're an agency. And it's like your fear of picking up the phone and say, oh my God, it's like you're just going through the numbers and actually you don't get any quality out of it. And I think it's a question that Jen said, outbound fills me with dread. When you start off, I know it's a painful process, but it's as long as you're coordinating with your marketing, I think it makes it much easier, because you've got really important messages to back you when you're making those calls and conversations. Ivan, do you have anything to add to that?
I would add, in terms of thinking about your marketing output, I would segment it. I mean, I like to think of it in two ways, in two sort of buckets: the marketing output that you just push out for general awareness, and the marketing output that warrants you and gives you almost an excuse to be then following up with people, doing that outbound lead generation, getting conversations, and they're going to be a lot warmer and more receptive to your outbound if it's off the back of, having hosted an event or having done a partnership with another business where your interests align and you've added value to an entire, industry. And I think we'll get onto that when we talk about what marketing initiatives we're really seeing a lot of success with. But ultimately, I think it's about just segmenting them in these two ways, and knowing that there's a difference between marketing that you can leverage to do outreach and marketing that you should just do as a general consistent awareness piece. But you've got that warmness ready to go once you've done certain things with your marketing. Brilliant,
thank you, Ivan. And in terms of, even back to you, I suppose, in terms of taking that forward, that sort of style, the outbound side of things, bringing that back into the strategy and what is the process of actually going about and developing the right sort of marketing new business strategy for your clients? And what are the elements that you need to bring in to actually deliver a successful strategy?
Shall I go with this? Yeah. I think in order to start doing that, you need to have a very good understanding of all of the tools and all of the levers that you have at your disposal, right? But then you don't necessarily need to implement all of them. But as long as you have these on, in practical terms, you've got them on sort of a Bible document that you've outlined to start with. So you've got your positioning, you've then translated it into a plan of a strategy, which isn't necessarily an actionable strategy yet, but it's, okay, what are we going to do on events? What are we going to do on thought leadership, referral strategy, workshops, you know, all of the social media, all of the different levers that make up your marketing. What can we do from this perspective? So it's just having an overview of all of this, and then starting to action these in actual shorter bursts of, say, you know, 90-day sprints, 3 months, like Adam was saying, you know, make them into actionable and accountable mini bursts that allow you to actually get going, and you know, almost treat them as an MVP. You know, in a startup, you put something out there and then you iterate, you see what works, you see what doesn't, and you just start to build from there and effectively replicate things that you're seeing success with. So I guess it's about having a broader picture of what you can do, distilling it in what you actually will do in the next 3, 6, 9 months, and then having the mindset to kind of keep that going, because the mindset is probably the most important thing. It's about being aligned from a leadership perspective, knowing that it's a long-term game, and knowing that you just have to be consistent and keep going at it. Even if you fail, you keep going, and having that always on. You know, I think there's a tendency to just forgo marketing sometimes when you're inundated with client work, but you need to have the infrastructure in place and the accountability across the team that allows you to keep that going out, even when even when you think you can't.
I think that's very true. I think that's the theme that's come across all this year and all the BD clubs we've run, which is that consistency and persistence of actually just keeping it regular, keeping contact, whether it's through marketing or through outreach. It's just making sure that you're in the front of the client's minds all the time, but not in a stalkerish kind of way. Adam, do you want to add anything as well, apart from not being stalkerish?
Not being stalkerish, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so with developing the strategy. So I guess, you know, we start any kind of strategy with an audit of kind of what's going on within the business. So interrogating, you know, what's working, what's not working, and that could be a mixture of kind of workshops and that analyzing sort of data, historic sales data, and sort of understanding what's behind it. And then just getting, you know, the agency's viewpoint on what they feel is working, what's not working. I guess we then look at, like, you know, objectives and KPIs, you know, what are we trying to achieve? And then how do we break that down? You know, there's the 12-week year is a great book where it's sort of like, you know, why do we think in years, right? Why? You know, this just because it's a calendar year, we kind of go, right, well, that's our objective for the year, but then it's about taking that and how do we break that down into quarters, to weeks, to months, right? And the great thing about, you know, with sales and the process mindset you almost need to have with sales is about what do you need to achieve this week that ensures you hit your new business objective, you know, in 12 months time. And that's what you need to focus on, right? And it's about focusing on the now and bringing a bit more impetus to it. So breaking down sales funnels, reviewing things like data and CRM, you know, what CRM are you using, how are you using it, have you got access to good data, where are your leads coming from, you know, percentage of sources, you know, what's the conversion rate, what's the quality of those leads? So that's a big one. Might be getting lots of leads. Are they the right leads? Are they the right quality leads? Are you qualifying them correctly? If you're getting to that stage, then what about the conversion part? Why are they not converting? How can you push them further? And then, you know, then it's, you know, auditing kind of all the marketing activity. You know, does it need to be better quality? Do you need more volume? And then, like, operations behind it, you know, personnel, resources. So that's again where a lot of things fall down. It's like, we've got all the things in place, but do you actually have the skill sets in place? Have you actually enabled people's time to deliver against those tasks to ensure that you're going to be able to drive this kind of strategy all the way through? So they're kind of some of the sort of fundamentals we look at and analyze to sort of build a strategy. I don't know if we want to answer some of the questions of Paddy or. Yeah,
I can bring them in. So there's a question that goes back to the sort of differentiation is actually and narrowing down of your sort of specialism. And there's one from Robbie, which is about sort of how do you go about convincing board and leadership that narrowing the audiences and narrowing the sort of agency spectrum is the way to go?
It's tough. That is tough. How do you do that?
Just before, I think one thing. Sorry, before you even get into that, starting to put a business case to your leadership is do a sale, like as easy as do a sales navigator search. You know, once you've identified your audience and their industry, you know, the types of business they are, put it into Sales Nav and see how many people that actually brings up in your pool of prospects, because then you need to make a call as to whether that number justifies you actually wanting to put a case together, because it might be 500 people, and obviously that just wouldn't be a big enough pool of prospects. So first kind of do the research to understand what that pool actually looks like. And then Adam, I think you were about to go into something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know there's a lot of data out there on this, right? So it's not like I'm just making this shit up. It's like there is proof out there in books and in studies that will back this up. But the other thing, because we're doing this actually at the moment with an agency in Liverpool that I was thinking about, and they wanted to go for, like, you know, they're just launching, they sort of had this idea of 3 sectors, and based on the experience of the founder and everything, we were like, no, sod that, we're going for like 1 sector. But actually that sector it's kind of broader, because it's beauty, it's fashion, it's luxury goods, so you kind of can, within a few, sort of focus on that. I think you could test this, basically, is the point I'm going down. So I don't think it'd be that difficult for you to build, say, like a separate landing page or replica of your website and focus it in particularly on a sector. You could even build multiple landing pages within your own website and just say, you know, these are the different audiences we work with. Here's a specialist page. And it'd be interesting to see if you reached out to that specific audience with that specific landing page and maybe with a specific set of creds. Do that over a period of time and see the traction you get with it over, you know, number of meetings converted and opportunities. Because I would almost guarantee that the mere fact that you're sending something that resonates and is deeply aligned to understanding that target audience is going to lead you to success rate. So it could be that you actually have to test it to prove it, you know, in my opinion.
And that sort of quite leads on into sort of the approach. And there's a question from Dagmara, which is around the sort of benefits or sort of things around sort of cold call versus cold email. And actually, in your opinion, is it still crucial to talk on the phone?
It helps. It helps. I mean, it depends who's making the phone call and how good you are on the phone, right? And if you're not trained and not done it before and you hate it, then you're probably going to make a, you know, pig's ear of it. But it's the phone is so undervalued, right? The mere fact, if you're able to get through to someone on the phone within 30 seconds to a minute, you can ascertain their level of interest and whether or not this could go somewhere. Email, deleted, ignored, right? You know, that's the difference, right? You're actually getting that contact. But having, you know, I come from a background where I started my career with recruitment and cold calling. So, you know, I was told to fuck off 80 times a day by marketing directors. So I learned and grew, like, got my stripes doing it that way. And not everyone has that luxury. So it's difficult to just say, yeah, pick up the phone, go for it. And getting through to people and gatekeepers is really hard. But where I would use the phone and where people need to get better is that point where you've maybe had the initial meeting or you've had an email and you've met with them now. It's that ongoing piece. It's that people will hide behind their email and sort of do the follow-up. It's like, pick up the phone. You know, if you've met with someone, pick up the phone, get their number and pick up the phone. Like, don't go back to email, like, because they're easy to hide behind and you can avoid them, right? And it builds, you know, we're in a relationships business, right? So we've got to get our personalities across. We've got to build rapport with people. So yeah, I think it's massively underused.
I'd add to that, just consider where they are in the marketing journey, you know, how all of the factors, all of the interactions they've had with you, and leverage tech to help you in your phone calls. So we use an email marketing platform called Kulia, which allows us to track effectively, once you've sent emails to people, what websites they're visiting, you know, what content they're engaging with on your website. And therefore, if you have all of this richness and you know that about a person, then immediately you've got a good reason to have a conversation with them if you know that they've looked at a particular thought piece and you have something to lead with, right? So use also sales tech that's there at your disposal to be able to have the right conversations when you're picking up the phone, rather than just going completely cold.
I think it's very true. I think that sort of automation and sales tracking is really important to understand clients and how they're interacting with your digital assets. Are there any other softwares or tools that technology and systems that you bring into place to help your marketing and your business side of things? Adam, I'm going to pass that to you.
So obviously, you know, CRM is the basic sort of foundation of everything. Like we're sort of high recommenders of Pipedrive because we just find it easy and customizable and very user friendly, and it's got great UX, so it doesn't try to upsell you like in the way like a HubSpot will, and it's not so aggressive. So I think it's just very user friendly. As Ivan said, we kind of use Coolia, you know, but I know there's other, you know, I think Gene's on the call, Lead Intuition and things like that. So you've got some great other sort of platforms that are out there to use automation and to like that's a lot about creating, you know, user journeys, automated emails, tracking, you know, who's doing what, creating dynamic landing pages off the back of it. You know, there's lots you can do within that world. And, you know, I think depending on where you are on your own journey, I think you need to sort of pitch yourself, but, you know, it can go, you know, quite fast, quite quickly. So, but talk to, you know, ourselves, talk to Gene, talk to people who know what they're doing with automation that can sort of take you on that journey. What else? We use a great tool called like LeadJet, which basically integrates LinkedIn and Pipedrive. It's like unbelievable. It does. You can basically tag people in LinkedIn. It basically creates an interface on your LinkedIn account, so you can search for email addresses. You can tag people in terms of all your customized fields. You can create automated templates. Like it just makes your life so much quicker. So that, and it's pretty cheap. So that's, we've got a discount code as well if you want it, but it's pretty cheap anyway. But it's great. Sales Navigator, LinkedIn, right? We use that. Like, I mean, that's again bread and butter. Like, get on Sales Navigator. You can build audiences, segment by keywords, years of experiences, job titles, anything you want, right? You can build out your criteria to find the people you need to find. There's billions of data tools out there. I'm not going to go through all of those. But I think they're the main ones.
And we can share this after the call as well with everyone anyway. So that's always useful. Thanks, Adam. Ivan, in terms of, I think there's a question which falls nicely in. It's about sort of the implementation or side of things of your marketing and sort of new business strategy. Talk about the objectives and the measurement side of things, but also I'm going to bring in a question from Chris as well, which is around actually negating that feast and famine, because often you sort of it's very sort of cyclical and sort of it's almost like a sort of a heartbeat machine going on sometimes for agencies. And how do you help negate that with your sort of the implementation of your marketing strategy, but also actually making sure that you've got a you're managing that feast and famine approach?
Yeah, I mean, I would on that, I would say it's just about the consistency, right? Because if you sort of start to rest on your laurels when you've won a couple of pieces of new business, and immediately you take your foot off the gas on your inbound and outbound efforts, then that's when you start to get into this feast versus famine situation. So I'd say, really, like I wouldn't stress enough how important the mindset, the approach, and just the sort of determination to be consistent and to be aligned across the team. I think new business and as a whole is rather than having some genius marketing idea or anything like this, it's almost more about project management and just making sure you're being so timely with everything. You've got deadlines in place, you're keeping people accountable. That's what I would say is just instilling this mindset, and then the rest follows, because if you've got a plan and a mindset, then everything happens from there. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the implementation, I think you mentioned about objectives and measurement, Paddy. Like, sort of going back to I think what Adam was saying earlier, is having a clear idea of what your commercial objectives are for the year. Have a new biz target. And make sure you've got a sales funnel which effectively works upwards from there. So I want to win, 500K of new business this year, then in order to do that, I need to have, 20 qualified meetings, 50 conversations, which come from, reaching out to, in practical terms, reaching out to 2,000 prospects per month, whatever that might be, whatever those numbers are. But again, it goes back to what I'm saying, is that if you have all these numbers down and you know what they are, there's no way you can't steer from that. You just you stick to that plan, and that's how you implement. So I would say it's just about, it's as much about the project management and the rigor as it is about having, magical ideas and ingenious, things that will make you stand out.
Yeah, I'll just build on that in terms of, I think what typically happens is that if you've got like 100% of your time to sell, basically, and you sell 100% of your time because that's going to bring in the most income, the reality is you will have the feast and famine analogy that you've kind of alluded to. So our suggestion is that don't sell all your time. Don't be busy all the time. And even if you can take on a client work and the money's there, don't do it, because I think it's a better strategy to be busy, say 80% of the time, right? But keep 20% of your time focused on long-term activity that's going to build future pipeline. Because that's the problem, right? Is that you get really busy, you take on all the work, you're slammed, and it's like, oh, no one's looked at the pipeline for a few months or a few weeks. It's suddenly like, oh, well, now we've got a big gaping hole in it. You like Ivan said, it's operational. It's consistency. You can't take your eye off the ball. You have to keep doing it. But in practical terms, like that might mean that you have to put in things in your diary. You have to block out time that is non-billable, and you need to start treating yourselves like clients. So if you have project management software, you put your agency down as a client, and you ensure that you attribute 20% or whatever the allowance you give yourself to do that work. And that ensures you're always thinking about the future, right? Because that's what needs to happen here.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to open up to this floor in a second. So if any more questions to come in, I know there's one already, but I'll bring that into a second. But last question from my side of things is around sort of actually the marketing initiatives that are working at the moment. And what are you seeing having most success these days? I'm going to pass that to Ivan.
Yeah. Events and partnerships. That's, those two words are sort of getting massive success from numerous clients. So it's irrelevant of the nature of the business, the audience, the sector that they operate in. When they're hosting events, but also when they are sort of partnering with other businesses where they share the same interests. And that can take the form of a webinar, of a conference, of a wider project, a survey that then distills into findings, and then the subsequent steps after that. But it's sort of collaborative processes, aside from the hosting of webinars and events, which obviously if you nail that and you can get you've got a good content plan to build up, your signups to that, and you can execute that well, and you can do all of the follow-up. That gets you a lot of success, because those are tangible leads. And like I was saying before, all the people that you reach out to on the back of that are engaged. They turned up to your event, so they're, in 95% of the cases, they're going to be up for a conversation after that. And then, this collaborative approach, which is trying to identify businesses or organizations either within your industry or not, that you can provide a value to in order for them to achieve something that something that is in their interest. So an example is, working with a governing body or a members association whose interest it is to drive, physical well-being in in any given region, geographic location. And if you can bring your expertise and your value to them, which they don't have, and use that to allow them to achieve these particular aims and objectives, then you're kind of, you're involved in that, and then immediately you get access to this entire prospect pool, because them being a big organization, they'll likely have, you know, a wide reach, and immediately you've got that link and connection that also opens you up to having warm, engaged people that you can then chat to off the back of that. So, you know, talking a lot of leads per month off the back of these types of initiatives.
Cool. Adam, do you have anything to bring into this?
Yeah, I just a couple of other ones that I think we've just seen really work. Like, like obviously you guys said events. I think email still and LinkedIn outreach, you know, is still, you know, bread and butter. Like, it's still the main source of generating leads. And I think some other interesting ones that we've seen work really well for clients are things like research guides, you know, you can call them white papers, or some sort of study where you're showing a sort of interest and done research that's proprietary into a sector or into that audience's challenges. They're hugely helpful. Any kind of like lead capture surveys, I'll call them, like, so just doing surveys or some sort of form of like gamification where people are sort of responding or contributing to something, but are also getting some value out of it, or is a great way of creating creating engagement and capturing data. So it could be a lead capture survey on your website. It could be, I mean, we've literally launched something recently called like the Fameometer, where you get to measure yourself and how famous you think your brand is. But it's just a bit of fun for the brand marketing person, and they get to go through it, and then it gives them some insight, but it spits out some suggestions at the end of it. But it all kind of keeps the conversation flowing. So those kind of things. And then the other one is like what I'd call like community building. So like Pimento, for example, right? So if you could all build your own mini Pimentos, who would be in that group, right? And what would you do with them, right? So that's a great way of thinking about marketing and inbound, right? So if you thought about who's your audience, wouldn't it be great if you built a community of that audience? And what would that community want? And how could you add value and impetus to that community on a regular basis? It's a lot of work, but if you get there, you will build really strong connections, and you will build a long, sustainable pipeline of opportunity, because it's just about nurturing that community. So I know that, yeah, community marketing, I guess I call that, and referrals, obviously.
Brilliant. Pimento is primed for that side of things. So yeah, anyone interested in Pimento, give Stephen a call after this. In terms of, there's a couple of questions in the chat at the moment. You talked about email and email marketing. Is that sort of, if you're doing the cold calling or cold email, what is your preferred, or what is the best practice approach to email, taking it forward and from a cold perspective? Is that the first point of call and then you can follow up with the call, or is it, what's the best approach? Ivan?
I mean, I would go on the premise that if you're cold calling someone, typically they would be in your CRM, they'd be in your database, and therefore they would have already received, they already know about you in some way, shape, or form. Sorry, Paddy, what was the
I think the question was really around sort of actually is, what do you do first, email or call, was the question.
I guess that, yeah, that sort of answers it, in that you want to somehow have appeared on these people's radar, in some way, shape, or form. You can decide internally how many touch points that person needs to have kind of seen or heard of your business prior to you engaging. But I would say, before picking up the phone, just make sure that they first they know about you at least. Yeah. And you've got a reason to get in touch, and then I guess, yeah. And that's where data or technology comes into place, which is actually, can you see if they've opened it, or have they clicked onto something and followed, and then it's easier to follow up with. There's a question from Danusia, which is, how do you find the right PR or publicist if events and partnerships are key? Adam? How do you find the right PR public? I mean, a lot of PR contacts are actually, people don't know, are publicly available on the websites of the people you go to. You go to like the Drum or go to Campaign. I mean, I'm not saying you'll get through to them, but they are listed. There's also like PR tools out there. I will have to come back to you on specific names, but there are databases around PR specialists. I think the
I think that the key, the challenge around PR, I think, which all agencies find, you know, is that the one PR itself, in terms of what you produce, isn't that difficult, right? In terms of writing press releases or writing thought leadership, right? Most people have the capability of doing that. The one thing that we don't have is media relationships, right? And that is the hardest thing. And that's why we always think that a PR specialist, you know, a freelancer or someone with those contacts is best to use. So if you want to push down the PR route, you need someone who's going to have those relationships, because they know how to talk to journalists, they know what to ask for, they know what like forward features are coming up, they know how to sort of get into their world, so to speak. And, you know, nurturing and trying to get the radar of a PR person or a publicist is just as difficult as a prospect. Treat them like the same way. So, you know, if you're thinking, oh, I've got to get on the radar and nurture them over 2 years to convert a prospect, PR's absolutely the same. It could take years, like, just to get on their radar. So you've just got to invite them to pick things. You've got to send them stuff. You've got to just keep battling at it. But it's a full-time job, right? So it's, you know, don't think you're just going to just chuck some stuff out there. But yeah, like Stephen said, there are PR specialists out there and people that will make your life easier in that world. And also, if you are going to commit to PR, it's a long-term thing. Don't think it's going to breed you results in like 3 months or so. You know, it's something you commit to for at least a year, right? In my opinion, because it's about brand building, it's about consistency. And if you're not, you know, going back to the linking between sales and marketing, if you're not doing that bit, you're not going to get the value out of PR just on its own without all the kind of outbound nurturing alongside it.
Brilliant. Adam, Ivan, we've got 2 minutes to answer this last question, which is, what is your opinion on more creative business development strategies once you have the day-to-day business development processes set up? That's by Ryan.
So I guess, how can you be more creative? I mean, I guess there's like, what I love about new business is there's no silver bullet. You can literally, I mean, do anything, try anything. You know, you have the freedom to try so many different things, take so many different approaches, and that can take a lot of shapes and forms. So I think just be yourself, and be willing to try different things, put yourself out there, put yourself, you know, out of your comfort zone, which is a big part of it. Yeah, I mean,
no, I love Ivan's answer, because I think that's it. You know, there's no silver bullet to new business, and we love hearing. That's what we're in it for, right? We love hearing new creative ways of doing things. And I would go back to your positioning, because if your brand positioning doesn't give you the excitement and impetus to create new creative thinking, then I would argue your positioning isn't differentiating or exciting enough. So it should be the platform that goes, oh, we should do it like this because we're all about that. But if you haven't got that, then you're going to do it the same as everybody else.
Brilliant. Guys, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam and Ivan, for a really enlightening session. We're going to be following up. We've recorded this session, so it'll be going on our YouTube channel, and we'll be sending that out later, either today or tomorrow. And then we'll be doing a follow-up later next week. If you'd like to get in touch with Speak to Grey Matters, let me know, and we can make introductions for you guys. We've got the next BD Club, which is on the 24th of November, and we're going to be talking about social content and all things that side of things. So watch out for the comments coming through. I'm going to pass back to Stephen, as he's got a few announcements. But guys, thanks very much for your time. That's been really helpful and useful.
Great.
That's great to be a part of it.
Thanks, guys.